Live from downtown Lansing, you're listening to the Spartan Beat with your hosts, Corey Robinson and Justin Finn.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Spartan Beat. I'm Justin Finn. I'm here with my co-host, Corey Robinson. And today we're joined by local Midwest recruiting director from 24/7, Allen Trieu. Allen, how you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem, guys. I'm doing well and happy to be on. Congratulations on the show. I haven't been on, I don't think, since you guys took over, but what a good time to pick it up since June's been kind of crazy here.
Definitely. And it's our first time having a stand-up comedian on the show, so it's a great honor to branch into a whole new industry. So I guess first off, we're going to go ahead and just let you introduce yourself, your background, how you got involved in the industry, and just kind of set the stage for how you got to where you are today. I know a lot of people are interested about that part of you, so just go ahead and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I, for an 8th grade project, started an NFL draft website, and it got kind of popular, and I got credentialed for the combine and went down there, and then slowly started to meet some of the right people in the recruiting industry and decided I wanted to step over and try that. So started to do that, and then have been managing the region for what was Scout and then 24/7 for it's almost been 15 years now. So I pretty much, the whole Midwest, I'm responsible for at least having a pulse on where those guys are going, as well as what kind of player they are.
I think your mic kind of cut out.
Yeah, so I think so then I'm just responsible for having a pulse on where those guys are going, as well as what kind of player they are and how good we think they're going to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I know Corey and I were excited to get a chance to work with you when we came over to 24/7. I know you probably don't want to hear this because you feel old, but I've been following your work since I've been in middle school. I think right around the time you started at Scout in 2004, I believe I read. That was right around the time I was starting in kindergarten. So it's safe to say that your whole recruiting career is kind of what I've used to follow recruiting this whole time. So definitely great to work with you. The next thing I kind of wanted to ask is, since you've been covering the region for so long, what are kind of some of the differences that you've seen from the way that Mark Dantonio used to recruit and the Mel Tucker staff here in the last year or so? Like, what are your big picture kind of perceptions of what you've seen?
Well, I think the Mark Dantonio staff maybe took a little bit longer to offer. They like to get guys in camp. They like to get to know kids, and they were very concentrated regionally. You saw their classes in some years. It was entirely Midwest kids, mostly Ohio, Michigan, with a little bit of Indiana, Illinois, and occasionally they'd pop up to Wisconsin and find a Trey Waynes. But they didn't step out of the region a ton. They would dip into Florida, Texas, Georgia, a little bit here and there where they would find a guy. But I think you're seeing a much more broad net cast in recruiting right now. You're also seeing Michigan State offer a lot more kids and offer them early. You're seeing them extend offers into the 2025 class, which that was very uncommon under Mark Dantonio. So I don't think either approach is necessarily right or wrong, but they are very different, very, very contrasting styles of recruiting.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess staying in region, did you want to kind of talk a little bit about the two in-state commits that they do have in 2022? Ashton Lepo, that was the guy that you were way ahead of a lot of people, where you kind of saw him and got him rated more in line with his talent levels or what his ceiling is, and then also Tyrell Henry.
Yeah, so first on Lepo, I mean, I've seen this story before, which is why I think I was a little bit ahead, and I happened to be not too far from the lakeshore, so I had a chance to see him. And he just was very similar to what kind of a Colt Chewins looked like at that age, similar to what an Eric Fisher looked like at that age. We've missed some of those guys in the past where they were underdeveloped but had this big, long frame. And so I wasn't going to let that kind of deal fool me again. So he clearly had the athletic ability, and he clearly had the frame, and I felt comfortable with how he could develop after seeing him. He showed some grit, showed some toughness. What was at a playoff game where his team was very much the underdog, and he fought through that game. And then in the off season, boy, he has changed his body around. I think he played the season at like 235, 240. If you've seen him recently, which I saw him at the Under Armour camp, he is a put-together 270 plus. So he's already, he was underdeveloped at the time of his commitment. Now I think he's much more in line with what you would see from a Big Ten Power 5 offensive tackle recruit at this stage. And then Tyrell Henry is a guy who every time we've seen him, very smooth, makes a lot of plays in space. You see that from him in all phases of the ball, after he intercepts a pass on defense, after he gets his hands on a return, and certainly on offense. So I think he's a guy who can do a lot of different things with it. It sounds like the plan is probably receiver, where he has really good ball skills and, like you said, very smooth in and out of his breaks. But that was one that, he picked up a lot of steam. Penn State offered him, Michigan offered him. So that was a good one for Michigan State to get in on and win the battle on, even though they weren't able to host those guys at that time.
Definitely. I guess going down to Ohio, Ryan Baer, what's kind of your take where his recruitment's at right now? I know Michigan State has him coming up on the 21st through the 23rd through a midday or a midweek visit, and then he's got one more after that. So have you been able to keep track of him much and where you kind of feel where Michigan State's at with him potentially?
Yeah, I saw him in person twice and was able to speak with him, and he seemed very measured in his approach in recruiting. And then after that, things got a little more interesting because he picked up some new offers. Notre Dame's going to have something to say about his recruitment now, but he's taken a couple of officials and he's really enjoyed those visits. He's not the kind of kid that I think is going to get too swayed by the logo on the helmet. He really liked his official at Illinois, he really liked his official at Pitt. Those schools are very much in the mix. I think Virginia's still in there. Michigan State is still in there. So that's not a kid who I think is going to just pick Notre Dame because that's a notable program. He's going to give everybody a chance, and it may seem kind of funny to mention Illinois in the same breath as some of those schools, but I think that those first two visits did kind of set the scene. Michigan State now knows what they've got to do and who they've got to beat now after he took those first couple of visits.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you with him with the logos and not chasing that, because I actually had thought, and maybe the Notre Dame visit when he does the unofficial will make an impact, but I thought it would have made a bigger impact where he maybe moved one of the lesser teams, I guess you would say, logo-wise, that he had committed to having an official with, and he stuck to his plan. So, yeah, definitely talking with him, I definitely agree where he's just a no-nonsense offensive lineman from the Midwest that doesn't really care. He just wants to play football.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
Michigan State's gotten some offensive linemen out of Ohio in the past, and they've been kind of built the way, this kid is. This is very much a Luke Campbell kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then you mentioned that Ohio success right there. I know there's some talented guys that are coming in from Ohio on unofficial visits that were coming in here in June, including Trevor Carter, who is playing for Trayvon Pendleton over there in Ironton, Ohio. That's just one of the guys. But can you talk about some of the other guys that are coming into Michigan State in these 2023, 2024 classes? Just what are some early names to know in the region out of the guys you cover? And just can you talk a little bit about the temperature of what Michigan State's perception is out there for these next two classes?
Yeah, so first, I think, like I mentioned, them offering a number of these guys early, that's going to matter. And maybe not necessarily being the first all the time, but at least one of the first. And then they keep in constant communication with those guys. So I think it's going to pay off at some point here. I know Miles McVay was up on campus. That's a guy who's got a lot of different offers from around the country, but took the time to come up and visit Michigan State, speaks very highly of Michigan State, and that would be a great program to get a foothold into because they've got a lot of talent coming up the pipe. I've seen even some of their middle school talent at East St. Louis. They're always going to have some body, so it was really good to get him on campus. I think sticking on the offensive line, I know Trevor Lauk from Indianapolis was up recently, spoke extremely highly of Michigan State. I think they're as alive in that one as any school that's offered him so far. We'll see if a Notre Dame or an Ohio State or somebody like that pulls the trigger on him, but I think Michigan State has definitely put themselves in very good early position with him. And then if you go kind of top of the board, Sonny Styles, I think, is one of the best recruits in the entire Midwest in that class, and he's come up to campus and visited Michigan State, and it's given them a chance to recruit him. I think they're going to at least be in the mix on that, which I think is speaks to what this staff is doing to be able to get a guy like that on campus. You get Dante Moore on campus as well, big-time recruit out of Detroit King. They've done a really good job of, I think, getting some top guys on campus and having a chance to shake their hands and meet those kids.
Yeah, definitely. I know that they had a lot of interfacing opportunities already in June right now with the camp at Wayne State, where several staff members were. Obviously, the Sound Mind, Sound Body camp that we were in attendance with. So them being able to actually interface now that the dead period's over should actually help them kind of get to know some of these local high school coaches and just even get to know some of these kids. A lot of 2024 kids are coming to these camps as well. So just getting out there and showing their face should yield at least a little bit of a turnaround on the recruiting trails. And then I guess one other thing that I would just ask is more of a general question that I know a lot of people ask, even like me and Corey, these kind of questions, but we haven't been doing this for as long as you have. So do you have any I guess any entertaining or funny story of like recruiting where you kind of knew that somebody was good before everybody else, or just I guess any sort of story you want to share about recruiting that always sticks with you, whether it's like funny or just something that you like look back on and kind of proud of yourself for like identifying talent? Just anything interesting that you want to share.
Oh man, there's a lot of them. I guess as far as like identifying talent, I got sent to see a quarterback that was committed to Illinois. He was playing in Illinois, and they said, go see this guy. And I went and I said, hey, his wide receiver is the best player on the field, and nobody is recruiting this guy. I think we should at least slap a 3-star on him. And then I was kind of going like, maybe we should go higher, but I didn't trust myself. I was like, nah, I don't want to be so wrong on this. Let's just put a low 3 on him, and we'll just, if he turns out to be good, we'll go from there. And it was Corey Davis. He ended up going. The reason I guess nobody was recruiting him was an academic thing, and he came around late, and Western Michigan got him in and becomes his first-round pick. And for the rest of my life, I will regret not trusting myself on that one because I knew he was pretty good. I guess some of the funniest stories I can tell you is I had a dad of a recruit who was a doctor when my wife was pregnant, offer to deliver our child if I would just give his kid 2 stars. That's probably the most notable recruiting story, for the funniest one from all of those. But there's been a lot of them over the years, but those 2 kind of stand out.
Definitely. So maybe switching over to the comedy, since you kind of went there. How long have you been a comedian, and kind of did you have any comedians that were your favorite that inspired you, and what got you into doing that, as well as controlling the entire Midwest and knowing where all of these kids are supposed to go?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it by accident. There was when I was at Grand Valley, they did a student stand-up contest called Last Laker Standing. It was kind of modeled after Last Comic Standing, and so I did that. First time I had ever done stand-up, won it, not knowing at all what I was doing. And from there, kind of went around and met some of the right people, and it worked well with recruiting because I could go see kids and then try to do shows in those cities. So I've been doing stand-up kind of on and off for almost the same amount of time. I think it's been over 10 years now, but never have really like put myself full time into it. Obviously, recruiting and football is my first love. That just kind of keeps me normal after being bugged about stars and rankings and all that stuff all day. So I grew up on, when I was young, I used to sneak out. My grandparents had HBO, so I would sneak HBO and watch Eddie Murphy when I wasn't supposed to. So he was definitely an influence growing up. Then as I got older, Chappelle Show was all the rage when I was in high school and college, and that was definitely an influence on some of the things I did.
Definitely. Justin, do you know anything about Chappelle, or is he a little bit
boring? Yeah. Chappelle's my favorite comedian. I haven't seen too much of the Chappelle Show, but Equanimity and some of these newer specials, really like those, and also obviously would like the classics. So Chappelle's my GOAT. I think just the way he goes into detail when he describes any story just sets him apart from so many other comedians, and I think his detail and storytelling is just impeccable.
Yeah. Now it's funny because in my comedy life, I'm the kid, the recruit. I'm the one that's asking, like, hey, can you watch my tape, please? At least just listen to a clip of me. And then when they pick somebody up, I'm like, I can't believe you picked that. You rank that guy over me? Are you kidding me? So I actually it's funny. I have a perspective on them because I fight the same battle they do with, like, somebody please just watch my tape and get back. At least if I'm terrible, at least tell me. But somebody watch it and give me a real spiel. So it kind of gives me a perspective on where these guys come from.
That's funny. I'm sure you're at least a composite 4-star comedian, Allen. But really appreciate your time. It was great talking about recruiting and comedy. That was Allen Trieu, or as I'm trying to get the nickname to stick, True Chains. Maybe he'll have a rap career as well to combine with a comedy career. We'll see. Thanks for joining us, Allen. We really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Appreciate it. I'll do it anytime and look forward to doing it again. I cannot rap, so we'll stick to recruiting and comedy for now.
All right, that's fine. You can let the nickname go to waste. All right, guys, we'll be right back after this short break to talk some more recruiting.
Call it a sense of purpose, a higher calling, essential to our children's future. We call it our passion at Dean Transportation. We are a family, hardworking folks who for more than 60 years have connected children to learning, schools to our communities, and you to a better career, pioneering the best in health and safety standards because it's simply what we do, because safe student transportation has always been essential. Dean is now hiring community-focused individuals for immediate school bus driver, attendant, and mechanic positions for local schools throughout mid-Michigan. To learn more, visit jobs@dean.com/Lansing. Experienced applicants will receive up to a $750 sign-on bonus. For individuals with no prior experience, Dean will pay you to train. Positions may also allow you to start and stop work from local parking locations or your home throughout mid-Michigan. If you're looking to make the community a better place, we'll put you in the driver's seat. Join the Dean Transportation family today at jobs@dean.com/Lansing.
Boyne Golf presents Michigan's magnificent 10 extraordinary courses set among 3 incredible resorts with plenty of wide open spaces where the extra long days let you play and play and play. And when you're done, a variety of amenities and charming towns await. The golf's so varied, the accommodations so welcoming, each visit's a new experience. So visit BoyneGolf.com to plan your time here. That's BoyneGolf.com.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden says the U.S. and Russia can have a good relationship with each other.
We should be able to cooperate where it's in our mutual interest. And where we have differences, I want President Putin to understand why I say what I say and why I do what I do.
Biden spoke during a news briefing after his big summit with Russian President Putin in Geneva. Former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge is in the hospital after suffering a stroke. His family said the 75-year-old was conscious when he arrived at the emergency room in Bethesda, Maryland. Doctors performed a successful procedure to remove a blood clot, and he's in critical but stable condition. The Federal Reserve is holding interest rates steady while keeping a close eye on inflation. During a news briefing, Fed Chair Jerome Powell called it part of ongoing strong support for the economic recovery and said the COVID-related economic crisis has not fallen equally on all Americans. A task force is finding the controversial order from Governor Andrew Cuomo's administration to admit COVID patients to New York nursing homes caused more deaths and should have been reversed sooner. Sarah Lee Kessler reports.
The New York State Bar Association task force found the health department directive caused hundreds, if not more than 1,000 deaths of nursing home residents. The DOH has denied that, claiming the 6 weeks it was in effect starting March 25th of last year had no impact. The task force said otherwise in a report obtained by the New York Post. It also blasted Governor Cuomo for not reversing the DOH mandate sooner.
It looks like murder hornets are back. Officials with the Washington Department of Agriculture say a dead Asian giant hornet was found near Marysville, which is about 30 miles north of Seattle. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
Thinking of a new air conditioning unit for your home? Hi, Peggy Doty with Doty Mechanical. A new Carrier high-efficiency AC unit will lower your energy usage and increase your home comfort. Current Carrier Cool Cash offers and available utility rebates mean your savings have never been better.
Call Doty Mechanical today at 327-7777 or visit us at dotymechanical.com for your free estimate. For heating and cooling, the names to know, Doty Mechanical and Carrier, turn to the experts.
The Spartan Beat.
If you don't compete, you're going to stick out like a sore thumb.
Spotlight Radio Network.
And we're back for the next segment of the Spartan Beat today. The next thing that we're going to talk about today is diving into two of the new commits that Michigan State has picked up since the last episode. And the most recent of those two is offensive tackle Braden Miller. Braden is from Aurora, Colorado. He's 6'7", 290 pounds. With him being from Colorado, it gave him the chance to get to know Coach Cap and Coach Tucker back when they were at Colorado. So he's one of the only 2022 recruits that they actually got to meet in person. And his offer sheet is a very impressive one. He had Stanford, which was an official visit that he had scheduled here for the end of this month that he has foregone in order to commit to Michigan State. Also had offers from Miami, Michigan, Utah, and as Corey will tell you here soon, a lot of those schools are interested in him as well. And Corey, I'll just let you speak on Braden Miller and your thoughts on him, his recruitment, and just things of that nature.
Yeah, Braden Miller, 6'7", 290, where moves really well, and he's got a lot of room to put a lot more weight on. He'll probably be one of those guys that hits 315, 320, and stays really athletic. So that's definitely what you want out of your left tackle, right tackle here. And as far as his recruitment, he was actually the only 22 recruit that the offensive line coaches were able to see in person, Kapilovic and Harris. So that was what they built that bond with him being from Colorado. So as they were coaching there, they actually had him as a camper when he was in 9th grade, I believe, or 10th grade, 9th grade, I guess it would be. And then he took a couple unofficial visits there and was around the coaches. So he was somebody that they knew, and in turn, he was really comfortable with them, knowing them, going through this. Because, I mean, if you look at his offer list, Michigan, they were really pushing hard. He didn't really get a lot of interest there. I think he wanted to have an offensive line coach, not a tight end coach. Then Miami, the Hurricanes were after him pretty hard, trying to get him on visits in Utah. And then an interesting one was Stanford, which obviously is a great school and great education. Their hit rate on when they offer a kid is pretty good. They usually get them. They don't offer very many kids because of the academic part of it, and they don't miss on a lot of the kids that they get. So, that's a huge win. And then you factor in the fact that his brother actually plays for Stanford as well. And he felt comfortable enough after his visit to East Lansing that he canceled the Stanford official visit that he had scheduled for the last weekend of June. So, I mean, that's definitely a lot of trust that he has in the coaches, and just everything he saw on the June 4th official visit weekend that he had up here at Michigan State just let him know it was the place to be. As far as on the field, he's just, like I said, he's that type of tackle that you want to get in your program, that you need to have, where he's got that length. He can move his feet really well. When you watch his tape, you see a guy that plays with good pad level for being so tall, because in the high school thing, a lot of times you're playing shorter guys, so it's actually tougher for some of these big offensive linemen to play with good pad level. But he bends well, and you can see that he shows that he has a really good football IQ, because his technique is really well. And then you see him utilize his athleticism, getting out to the second level, making blocks, pulling as a tackle to get out in front of screen plays. So for him, like, that's one of those guys that you can easily project to having a ton of success and probably winning a starting job on the offensive line in the not too distant future.
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully people don't take it lightly of how hard of a recruiting battle like these kind of battles are to win. Like, as you said, Stanford doesn't offer that many people. Here, I just real quickly Googled. They have sent out 80 offers in their 2022 class. Michigan State, for example, I know is above 300, and that's not even top 5 in the nation. So it's safe to say that there are probably at least 25 programs that have sent out over 250 offers, and Stanford has sent out 80. So for a West Coast kid to have a Stanford official visit scheduled, who's obviously a take for Stanford, they're not offering someone that's not a take. And if you're thinking, okay, maybe he fell down the recruiting board, well, the official visit debunks that notion. So West Coast kid was a take at Stanford, didn't even make the visit before committing to Coach Cap. And like you said, programs like Michigan and Miami, they actually were trying to schedule official visits. So this is a big recruiting win. I know some people might just look at the star ranking and move on and say it's a good get, nice height, and that's all there is to it. But this is a real hard-fought recruiting battle that Coach Cap won, and he won it in pretty impressive fashion that he wouldn't even give a lot of these schools a shot. So people shouldn't really overlook that fact of how it really went down. And the other commitment that Michigan State got in the last week, which was another player that committed after or during the visit, as Braden Miller committed a short while after his visit, but Quavian Carter here has committed during his actual visit on a Saturday. And this Lee County safety, as 24/7 has him listed, is a linebacker recruit from Michigan State. And he's a guy that just visited Florida State at the beginning of this month and had glowing words for the program there, the coaching staff, and basically said that Florida State was a school that he could see himself at. And just 1 week later, 1 week after this visit, he commits on the spot to Mel Tucker at Michigan State. And if you just go back and kind of, I know somebody shared inside our VIP message board, they shared a video of him being interviewed back in March about how the interviewer asked him, what's a dream school that you would take an official visit to right now if the dead period ended tomorrow? You can name any place. And Carter said Michigan State, and specifically said that Mel Tucker is somebody he's really interested in talking to, as he was in consistent contact with Tucker and the staff at that point. So this is something Michigan State has been working at for months, and even with the Florida State interest, there was Michigan State that he ended up committing to, and the visit must have knocked it out of the park for him. And the other thing I want to note before I turn it over to you, Corey, is the fact that he did have a Clemson offer. And this Clemson offer, I got it confirmed that it's a legit one. And a lot of people didn't update his profile in the 24/7 network because his Twitter account's been inactive. So Instagram is where he was posting the offers. People didn't see it. So his offer sheet includes Clemson, Ole Miss, Michigan, Penn State, Tennessee, Florida State, like I said. So this is a big get for Michigan State, as like Stanford with Braden Miller, Clemson is also not offering people that they're not very impressed with. So that really tells you all you need to know about his legitimacy. But Corey, I'll let you talk about the kind of player he is, what you see from him, just his recruitment in general.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know how many people Clemson have offered, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's less than even Stanford, which is a low number. They're pretty picky with who they go after. As far as him on the field, he's a 6'4", 205, 210 pound linebacker. He plays at Lee County, which produces a ton of talent. That's the deep south of Georgia. So they got some really good football down there. Well coached. They understand what they're doing, so they're going to come in prepared. But they use him as kind of a box safety, where he's a safety for them, but at the same point he plays down in the box more, and he will take up a big area because he just covers so much ground. He's a long strider, just really fast, athletic kid, long arms. So he's somebody that you can easily, get up to 235, 240 pounds, and he's going to still be running like he's a safety. So that, to me, that is a huge get to get him. That's like one of those, I guess you hear how they call them SEC type players. That's not like a star ranking thing. Like there's everybody, even Alabama, but everybody down there is pulling 3 stars. They're not all 4s and 5s down there. That's not why they look like that. What they're finding is they're finding these freak athletes with great frames that they can add good weight while keeping them explosive and fast, and actually making them more explosive once they add the muscle. And when you look at Carter, that's like one of those type of guys where, he's not a finished product right now, but what you have is a guy that's 6'4", 210 pounds right now, long arms, can run, can cover, and he absolutely loves the hit. Like, you just watch his tape, and all you see is him blowing guys up, which he'll have to maybe reel that in a little bit, because he's going to get himself kicked out of some games because he does go pretty high quite often. But yeah, like everything that you want out of a linebacker prospect, like he checks those boxes. So the ceiling for him is incredibly high.
Yeah, definitely. Just like you were saying, he is a prototypical SEC kind of guy. And for him to be playing safety and to be playing that at a high speed, respective to his position and in his state, and then to be able to play linebacker, you would imagine he'd be a very athletic linebacker just from that background of it. And like with what MSU got in Quavaris Crouch, that seems to be the mold of the kind of linebacker they're trying to get. Somebody that is very, very athletic. They're not exactly looking for somebody that's big and bulky and is just a thumper, but somebody that can fly around all over the field, make plays, and at the same time still bring some violence to it as well.
Yeah. One thing before we move on from him too, I'll say, like, I kind of brought it up a little bit, but Lee County, like, to get in there is absolutely huge for Mel Tucker. I mean, if you look at the 22 class, they have now 7 kids committed in it. 3 of them are from Georgia. You got Buford, which is one of the top, if not the top, schools in Georgia. You got Carter down there in Lee County, which is a hotbed for talent. And then Christian Phillips, where he's kind of from a smaller town there in Georgia, too. So they're hitting a lot of different areas in Georgia to go along with it. And to me, I think that's the best state where you're just getting great athletes, but they're also well coached. So these kids are coming in prepared, knowing what to do, and that's huge.
Definitely. And then I'm sure the hiring of Saeed Khalif doesn't hurt in that regard with his Georgia background. And then another thing that I've noticed, at least, is that a lot of these guys that are not DBs are still tagging Coach Tillman in some of these pictures and tweets. Kind of goes to show that how he's still a point of contact for a lot of these Georgia guys just because of his background from Georgia. So that hire that a lot of people that didn't really follow recruiting really closely might have downplayed because it was an internal hire, and just I saw some lazy takes about that back when he was originally hired. But that hire is seeming to pay off as well, as obviously he played a direct role in a guy like Malik Spencer, but even a linebacker like this, or just even the defensive tackle Caden McDonald that visited, I think he's tagged Tillman before. Just a lot of these non-DBs are tagging cornerbacks coach Travaris Tillman because he's a Georgia guy and he's helping recruit all these Georgia guys. And to transition from there, we're going to touch on some of the guys that were visiting this past weekend, official visiting. And the first 2 guys I'll bring up as I go through this list is Caleb Coley and Davion Collins. They're both Georgia guys. They're both cornerbacks, so there's a lot of overlap there with Tillman, as that's his position and his home state. And Coley, the notable thing about him that everybody talks about is his Clemson offer that he picked up in the last few weeks. So Clemson not only thought he was good enough for an offer at one point, but since it's so recent, you know that he's currently a take. He's not someone that could have slid off the recruiting board. And Davion Collins is a guy that just ran a 4.4440 at the Tennessee camp. I believe we've talked about that in a previous podcast, but a lot of speed there. And Corey, what are your thoughts on these guys' visits? What are your thoughts on just these guys in general?
Yeah, both of them, they're not the most talkative recruits, so it's hard to kind of get what they're getting. But what Caleb, he actually did give me a little bit of information on it before I lost them. But what he was saying is that the whole visit was absolutely amazing. He said the people there are absolutely phenomenal. And then I said, so what's your favorite parts of it? What kind of stuck out? What are you going back home to Georgia thinking about? And he just said the people, the culture, the love that they showed me, and then the food. So they must have fed him well while he was there too. I know with 24/7 has him as a 3-star. I don't know if it's a high or mid or whatever. But he, to me, is like a high 4-star talent. When he was one of the guys that when I put his tape on when they offered, I expected he would be obviously a decent player, but then I popped it in and instantly it was like that whoa factor where you move the tape back and start over, just more focused into it. I think he has a chance to be a special player well beyond even Saturdays. He's that good. And
definitely.
Did you have something on Coley?
No, nothing on Coley. And then I don't think Davion Collins really got back to us, right? Nothing much to add there from him.
Well, I heard from Malik Spencer, who also is not a huge stalker. I know he feels really good with how the visits went. He was actually there on an unofficial visit, so he was able to spend quite a bit of time with both of them. And he likes the chances there. And Collins, while he doesn't talk a lot, he posts a lot on Instagram, and you would constantly see his feed with Michigan State stuff, and he's still doing it. A week later or whatever, a few days later, he's still popping pictures out. So I think that kind of speaks volumes to it. And then I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of those guys was to end up in the class eventually.
Yeah, definitely. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on when you said Malik Spencer was there. So Spencer, there was some chatter he wanted to visit some places, I believe, this month. And I feel like that might not be happening anymore based on kind of the posts we saw from his dad on Instagram about how he's totally locked in on his commitment to Michigan State. There's no wavering. He got up here, saw everything he needed to see, just that nature of things. So that was good to see with Spencer. And then also the other thing I wanted to say was, with the fact of the matter of all these Georgia guys being essential to Michigan State's vision, the idea of getting them all here on the same weekend was good, because Malik Spencer was in the room when Quavion Carter committed, and one would only imagine that it didn't hurt that Spencer was there that whole weekend. And then also Coley and Collins, then both Georgia guys being there on the same weekend, was well coordinated. I'm sure they were probably inspired to see that Carter commitment and just the energy there. And then the similar reaction that we heard, in addition to Spencer being in the room when Carter committed, was, I believe, Caden McDonald told you in his article that he was also in the room with Carter and Spencer when that commitment happened. So he's also kind of getting to see a little insight into that Georgia love that Michigan State has. I know I really liked the quote that he gave you where he said, seems like half the team's going to be Georgia boys by 2023. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that whole Georgia element that this weekend had, and even just beyond the 2022 class with McDonald there, who's a 2023 defensive tackle that holds an in-state Georgia offer. Just that whole element of this weekend, I feel like definitely deserved to be highlighted.
Yeah, definitely. And I think 22, obviously, you got 3 out of 7 are Georgia. There'll probably be more. But I think 23 and 24, that's when you're really going to see some huge numbers from down there, because now – you can only do so much on a Zoom.
Right.
But now that you're getting Caden McDonald's. You're getting all of these elite level Georgia kids up on campus early in their recruitments. You're building that thing. You're getting them back up on campus again. McDonald, he said he may show back up in the summer, but at worst he's showing up in the fall. So now you've really got the groundwork started there with them. So I think the 22 class is going to be really strong with Georgia ties, but I think 23 you're going to see it take a whole nother step where you start seeing them win a lot more of those battles where you look at those offer lists and you're just like, oh wow, I can't believe they got that guy to come up here with offers from Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, all of the usual suspects down there.
Definitely. And then also moving along with the rest of the guys here that were on their OVs, I guess we can knock out Will Stone real quick. He was the kicker that was here this weekend. He's an Austin, Texas native, and he got an offer from the University of Texas in Austin, and he pounced on that shortly after visiting. As one would expect, that's his hometown team.
Sometimes you got to turn over a couple stones, though, when it comes to kickers.
Right, exactly, yep. And even just for kickers in general, they're going to prefer that warmer, drier climate. So I guess Texas favors him a little more than the snow in East Lansing. So understandable for a few different reasons that he went that way. Then we also had Alessandro Lorenzetti, offensive tackle, here visiting this past weekend. There's one of the cool things about this recruitment is that Coach Cap kind of found him really early. I believe he only had a couple P5 offers at that time. Since then, Georgia, Penn State, and Michigan have offered. Corey, did he get back to us? Do you have anything to add about what he might have felt about the visit? I know we're kind of waiting and seeing where he goes next here.
I think that one was Stevens, and I didn't see an article with him, so that might be somebody that I reach out to here tonight or tomorrow and see what I can find out, just because now that you bring that up, I guess I realized that we didn't have his. But yeah, I think, like you said, really odd recruitment because he came from Canada, from Montreal. So he transferred last year to a prep school in Connecticut just so he could get seen and have everybody recruit him. But then the problem is the season in Connecticut got canceled, so then he had no season. So him and his coaches, they scrimmaged each other 3 or 4 times. He did a bunch of workout videos, and he got those out. And that's where you've seen his recruitment absolutely blow up, which is wild when you really think about it because, he hasn't played a junior season, and he's from Canada. So the upside for him is incredibly high, I think. Obviously, they're going to have to get some good weight room stuff on him, get him a little stronger, but just the size and athleticism, you can see why all of these big-time programs are in on him. And he seems pretty loyal, so we'll see where he goes with his recruitment. Michigan State, like you said earlier in the show, they picked up their 4th commitment. They're going to take 5. So he is definitely one of the 3 or 4 names that you really want to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. So the other guys that visited this weekend, guys that we've talked about, at least the next one is Curly Thomas. We talked about him quite a bit throughout our show here over the course of various episodes. We don't need to talk too much about, I guess, the kind of player he is. We know he's one of the top defensive end prospects, but Corey, I believe you talked to him about his thoughts on the visit. Just real quick, what were his takeaways there?
He was definitely blown away. He always held him high, so that wasn't new. But he had told me the visit actually elevated it more, and it was even better than he thought. A big thing that he did say that sticks out to me, most of the teams are recruiting him to be a 3-4 linebacker, outside linebacker, and he knows and sees himself as a traditional defensive end pass rusher because I think he's almost 250 already, 6'4", 250, and he definitely said Michigan State is the best scheme fit out of all my programs, so that's something good that he recognized to go along with the connection he got with Mel Tucker, that was huge. Like, those guys sounds like they spent a lot of time together. And Tucker kind of showed him the vision of what he is going to do. He didn't say, I'm hoping to do. He said, this is what's going to happen here, and we really would like you to be a part of it. That really stuck out to him as something that he wanted to maybe piqued his interest even more with the whole situation. But yeah, he's always been a guy that's been a top priority for Michigan State. Despite him being from Texas, they stayed on him, where that's not necessarily a hotbed for Michigan State. They've had some success there, but they don't have those connections like they do Georgia, and neither does the Big Ten unless you're Ohio State. So they've been doing great with that recruitment. He's got a couple more left, 3 visits left, and then I believe he told me it was like the middle of July he's planning on making a decision. I think Michigan State is definitely in that top group, so it'll be interesting to see where he goes with it.
Yeah, definitely. And then the last kid that visited that we haven't talked about so far is Arizona tight end Michael Masunas. He goes to Hamilton High School in Chandler, Arizona, same high school as Nico Marchiol. I don't think they're necessarily looking to play together, so that's not really much of a narrative, but that is out there. They are teammates, so it's worth to bring it up. But then, so I talked to him about what he thought about the visit. He also, just like you said, Curley said, he had the same kind of quote about the vision. He said, there's no question that Michigan State's a very strong program, and this coaching staff has a plan for how they're going to move forward, and they're in the process of moving towards accomplishing great things. So, yeah, it seems like they're doing a good job of laying out the plan, and that's what's kind of the takeaway for a lot of these guys. And then he also obviously said that getting to spend time with the entire staff stood out to him, and then obviously primarily Coach Gilmore, Tucker Johnson, or who he named as the guys he spent the most time with, and just said that seeing the coaches in person helped him elevate Michigan State's standing. So he does not seem to have a set plan on when he might commit, but I know he's visiting Utah this next weekend, I believe, unless I'm mistaken. So that was the last kid that visited this weekend. Real quick, we're going to touch on the small list of visitors for this upcoming weekend that are out there so far publicly, and that's quarterback Caton Hauser and Jaron Glover, who's a wide receiver from Sarasota, Florida. Hauser is obviously the St. John Bosco quarterback that is all the way up there on the quarterback board. I know I've heard that there are some people in the building that prefer Hauser over Marchiol, but they did schedule Marchiol first. They did try to close him up first, so there are obviously people that like Marchiol above Hauser, as well as that would indicate, but there are a lot of people in the football building that would be just as happy, if not happier, with landing Hauser. I know we have both talked about how he's a much better passer. I know I was drawn to Marchiol's mobility, but I guess, Corey, is there anything that we want to add about Hauser that we didn't already talk about in recent weeks about him moving up the visit and things of that nature?
Yeah, I think he's probably, like I said, if they get any of their top 4 guys, top 3 guys, they're getting a good quarterback. So that doesn't necessarily matter. But if I had to say who's the most talented one, I would say it's Hauser. So getting him on campus is huge. He kind of shut it down to where it looks like it's going to be Michigan State or stick with your Boise commitment. So that brings it down to, just the 2 teams. You get him here this weekend, see what you can do with it. But yeah, he's a kid that he keeps getting better and better, and that's what you want out of recruits. You don't want to find the guy that was really good his sophomore or freshman year, and then he just kind of stayed the same or maybe fell off compared to peers, where Hauser's a guy that's completely keeps climbing the ladder, and that's something that you love seeing if you're a coach and you're looking to have a future signal caller there.
Definitely. And then I think I read the quote, the last episode we had from our West Coast guys, where they had said that the 24/7 West Coast guys, Greg Biggins and them, that Hauser looked like the most impressive quarterback at the California stop of the Elite 11. And yeah, so it just goes to show you he's really impressing across the country. He's a 24/7 sports 4-star. I don't think by the composite, but I think by 24/7 Sports exclusively. And then the other guy, actually two guys, the other guy who I didn't name was Ryan Baer. His visit starts on Monday the 21st, so that's still technically before our next episode, even though that's not starting on Friday like Glover and Hauser's. So yeah, so there's Jaron Glover visiting and Ryan Baer visiting in addition to Hauser. Corey, thoughts on both of those guys, even though I know we talked about Baer when Allen was here earlier?
Glover, I think he's a really good one. We haven't talked about him a ton, but really good talent, 6'3", can run. You're playing against some top players down there in Florida. You see a lot of his highlights. He was playing against Venice, which is Chuck Brantley, 21 signees team, Elliot Washington, who's probably going to be a top 30 kid at the end in the class at the end of the day in 23, and then Stephen Johnson, who was part of the class. So, I mean, and there's a lot of the other teams they're playing against down there. It's the same thing. Power 5 players all over in those secondaries, and he's toasting a lot of guys. So he's a lot better than, and he's a name that maybe we haven't done a good enough job talking about, but he's a guy that's a really good talent. And then Ryan Baer, of course, getting him on campus was huge. Him and his family are huge Michigan State fans. I think that visit's going to have a big impact on his recruitment. It'll be interesting. You know, he's got his other schools to see, Notre Dame and a few others, but I do think Michigan State will easily somewhere be in that top 2 schools if I had to guess today.
Yep, I think he might have some unofficials maybe, but on his profile, the only official visit I see happening after Michigan State is the Tennessee one. So that'll be kind of towards the tail end of his visit circuit. So nice of Michigan State to get one of the final visits there. But speaking of Baer, this is a good segue into, I wanted to touch on the offensive line recruiting board just a bit. I know you mentioned it earlier when you said that's 4 offensive linemen for Michigan State. So Michigan State has commitments from tackles. We have 2 guards, first of all, Gavin Brocious and Chris Phillips. And then we also have at tackle, we have Lepo, and then we have just the recent commit in Braden Miller. And then that leaves us with one more spot for Michigan State's class. And I know we've already talked about this quite a bit. Tackles are guys you'd rather prioritize in most cases because of the versatility and how a lot of them can usually kick inside and play guard, and at the end of the day you would rather have somebody with more mobility playing inside than a guard having to go out and play tackle like Michigan State had done the last several years. So that kind of makes it seem like the last guy will be a tackle if Coach Cap can land one of the guys he really likes. And that's a great spot to be in now, where you have several tackles that you like and you have 4 spots shored up. So that gives Michigan State some options here. Corey, you want to just talk a little bit in the last couple of minutes here about the good spot of the offensive line recruiting board and those final options for that last spot?
Yeah, definitely. When you had 3 and you needed to get 2, you know, you get a little nervous. Like, all right, these guys all have great options. But getting that 4th one, it almost puts the ball back in your court where these guys now know, hey, Michigan State's got 1 visit or 1 spot left. Each guy's visited or they have a visit coming up, so you know they'll all see it. They all have a chance here. The names to keep an eye on obviously is Lorenzetti, who we mentioned, and then Ryan Baer, who we just mentioned here on the 21st. You got on the 25th Andrew Chambly. He's committed to Arkansas, but he's coming up for a visit, and they just had a coaching change at offensive line. They lost their coach, so that might open some things up. And then obviously there's Keontae Goodwin, the guy out of Indiana, who I think is the best offensive tackle in the 22 class. You know, he's a name that you guys might not want to forget about because I know Michigan State hasn't, and I know he hasn't forgotten about them. So those are kind of the 4 names that you're looking at primarily as who could be the last spot.
Yep, definitely. And then I know also in the distance is Kamari Landers, who's an in-state guy, projects to guard, I believe, even though I think he might be listed as a tackle in 24/7. He's a guy that at the time that he originally announced his commitment date was not necessarily a take, and since that point he's lost about 35 pounds. I still don't think they'll prioritize him over all these tackles we just mentioned, but that's not a bad final option to have at the end of the day for if you really need to take him for the 5th spot. But all right, guys, that does it for this episode of the Spartan Beat. I'm Justin, that was Corey, and until next time, thanks for joining us.